All right, just take a look here for a moment. And where do you think we're looking at? What representation of people has somebody artistically shown here? You've got to go through some thoughts like it's got to be somebody ancient or somebody in Middle Times that got taken into slavery or something because they end up naked somewhat. What else can we see? We see they have curlyish hair, a lot of it blonde and reddish. And they're pale type people, it seems, with somewhat of a tan. You can see these guys over here, definitely they're out in the light. This apparently would be under a shadow, shade of a tree that you're seeing here a little bit. Who do you think that is? Well, this is an interesting article I've got coming out, and I'm doing a redoing on it now because it cross-inked, and then I had a bad thing in the middle of it too. But this is from way back in January 12th of 2020, and I warn you now that I got behind due to being banned, and so we're going to see a flurry of information coming at you, and it's going to come at you fairly wild. I'm going to have certain groups that I'll be doing my series type things on, but then I'm going to be having this stuff that come out in between all that stuff. And it will be on articles like this that are going to lead all the way into April again. It probably will take me till July to get to them all. Before I could show you at the end of this, I have like 30 something lined up. So that's more than a month. And if I do my regular studies, sorry, coffee, if I do my regular studies videos, then it's going to take me 2 months, 2.5, 3 months to get this pumped out, but I'm pumping it out in pieces. Well, this is supposed to be a representation of Columbus's Caribbean cannibals that he talked about. And is this, it's almost, let's see if I can get it in there a little better than that. Sorry guys. A new study of ancient Caribbean skulls suggests Christopher Columbus's accounts of fierce raiders abducting women and cannibalizing men might be true. Now this has been overlooked a lot, and people said, oh, well, the people in the islands, and this is all in the islands when he originally met there, and there was this group that was there, so it was like the first people that he had met, and then later all the others, and then there was that strangeness of the account that he had started with, and everybody goes, oh, well, he was probably misjudging. That doesn't seem to be the case. In 1492, under orders from King Ferdinand of Spain, famed Italian explorer Christopher Columbus discovered the New World of the Americas while trying to find a new route to India, and has been both credited and blamed for having opened up the Americas for European colonization. And white man bad for bringing civilization to everybody. But I'm about sick of that. And by sick of it, I mean past. But in here, we talk about how Christopher Columbus discovered the New Worlds while trying to find a route to India. India used to be run by Aryans. When he ran into these first people, he thought he knew he was looking at. He thought he knew what he was looking at, and these people were apparently getting preyed on by another group who would cannibalize the men and steal the women. Now, archaeologists have said this has happened much sooner, and we'll get into this shortly, but also we have the lie that Christopher Columbus thought he was going to fall off the end of the earth and that they didn't know the world was round. I've gone over this with ancient Greeks and Eratosthenes, who even measured the circumference of the earth, figuring out that on the longest day of the year there are no real shadows at Syene, but a definite one down in the delta where he was, and he had somebody pace it off and figure it out. But worse than that, more than that, stronger than that, so much stronger than that, the ancient Sumerians or the people that declimated are 360 degrees to a circle, and how the sun falls and does its thing, and they declimated as being round. Later, it seemed the Akkadians got on this idea where they had taken this idea of firmament and four corners of the earth and set it up on a pillar. And then later in the biblical tales that you get from Babylon, from the captivity, it's a twist on that idea. And in the biblical story, we're basically living in a snow globe with vents in the top and spaces made out of water and all that crap. But the ancients knew better than that. In fact, it was kind of driven out of humanity, or we were made to believe a bunch of false things, and that's kind of what my site's about, is about ancient times and trying to clarify and just bring some light, if you will, onto a very shadowy subject covered in mist. But I've got this knack of blowing it away, so we're going to continue. Columbus's accounts of the Caribbean include gory depictions of fierce cannibals abducting and abusing women and eating men, while most historians have regarded these stories as figments of Columbus's imagination. A new study suggests the famous navigator might have been telling the truth. Strange that they used the exact same picture. Isn't that the same one that I used from pre-Columbian people and the evidence of pre-Columbian people in here? I have a new one about that, where there was a secondary done on this ancient Roman ship that they found that's been destroyed and has a bunch of amphora in it. It talks about and I will too, talks about all the apologies they give for reasons that it could be, but I'll do another one on that one. A new paper titled Faces Divulge the Origins of Caribbean Prehistoric Inhabitants, published yesterday, January 10th of this year, on Scientific Reports, presents 3D imagery from the cranial version of facial recognition technology. The researchers analyzed the skulls of early Caribbean inhabitants, revealing not only the relationships between different groups of people, but they claim to have upended long-standing assumptions about how the islands were first colonized. So not on the land there, but then they strode out into the islands of the Bahamas, and how that even got colonized. It wasn't the first thing like what we saw. It appeared to have come much later for all the people that came to the Americas. Here's a good look at one of these skulls they've got on here, and I wonder if the facial recognition software is going to give an accurate representation, and then what skin type they'll give to him and what hair type they might give to him due to the descriptions that were given. I spent years trying to prove Columbus wrong when he was right, said co-author Dr. William Keegan, curator of Caribbean archaeology at the Florida Museum of Natural History, and he said that one of the more surprising finds was that the Caribs, fierce seaborne marauders from South America and rumored cannibals, invaded Jamaica, Hispaniola, and the Bahamas. These were names, they had Isabella and so on, what they had named this at the time. And this, according to the scientists, challenged over half a century of assumptions that they have never made it farther than than Guadalupe. Now, I have to mention here that I've seen another person's assumption of the entire study, and while they try to say, well, they came out and they hit this one island, preyed on them, and they'd go back and forth, but not the other islands, the other guy goes, that's a radical faced assumption, whenever the other people, apparently to Columbus, correlated the data. So this is kind of like Gilligan's Island, and the headhunter people are there, and they keep showing up every once in a while, and this is a report given to the first people of the Americas he found. Here's another depiction from back then in time of it, and strangely it shows an Indian headdress, but it's not made out of eagle feathers and hawks and buzzards, but it is made from parrots. He has a hand parrot right there, and shortly after this we start with pirates and arg, and he got the parrot. He is shown with a Caucasoid somewhat phenotype, but dark skin, and they show him to be gray, which is odd, but this just could be the shading that they've put on it in some way, because I don't think anybody's gray. I'm not sure if you do. But then the girl here has somewhat wavy hair, mom has straight hair, the son has curly hair, they have tattoos all over. right? They have larger arrows and smaller arrows and so on like that. And there's a depiction. Caribbean Indians were cannibals in the Caribbean. Of these people, apparently. Columbus had recounted how raiders that he mistakenly described as Cannibals terrorized peaceful Arawak in the modern-day Bahamas, and the skulls now determined that the Carib presence in the Caribbean was far more prominent than previously thought, which adds credence to Columbus's claims. So in other words, they're finding a lot of skulls of these other people too, and so this stuff went on. But there's more. All previous archaeology studies in the origins of Caribbean cultures tested tools, potteries, and weapons, and relatively two-dimensional geographic understanding was held about the arrival and movement of people. But Dr. Keegan, however, analyzed more than 100 skulls dating from about 800 AD to 1592 and used 3D facial landmarks such as the size of an eye socket or length of a nose, which revealed the migration routes of 3 distinct Caribbean groups, which was really stunning, Ross said. And so here we see these people of a Caribbean expansion that came up out of here, pink to that. Now green is shown only on Puerto Rico. There is an initial colonization that is of these blue people. So you have this variation going on here. It's totally different than what they were thinking at the earlier time. And so that's the proposed new 3 migration routes of people of the Caribbean from alternate sources. Why does Miacolloid pottery appear in Hispaniola by 800 AD? Jamaica around 900 AD, and the Bahamas around 1000 AD. This is the question that had haunted Dr. Keegan, and he said that he had been stumped for years because he didn't have this Bahamian concept. But it looked like it led that way, but he couldn't prove it in any way. And I can understand that because I spent years screwing around with people on what they said about pottery and whether or not these people started making their pottery like that, or if they started trading with them for pottery, or if it really was them and they split up or whatever. And genetics is finally revealing quite a bit. They tried to reveal it off of phenotypes and skulls and things, but then again, if they're talking about Caucasians and Caucasians, it just falls numb, right? So here's some of this pottery that they found and everything, and I didn't find any neat symbolization, although there looked like there was a whole face and bust done here with a necklace that's around it. There appears to be have been another one, and it all just shattered into pieces. It could be whenever they came in and raided them, they ran around and busted up their statues. Lord knows. But he says he was stumped by years for the appearance of a distinctive type of pottery he now believes is the culture fingerprint of a Caribbean invasion. Previous studies of the ancient faces on pottery showed the Caribbean's earliest settlers came from the Yucatan and moved to Cuba and northern Antilles between 800 and 200 BC. The earliest inhabitants of the Bahamas and Hispaniola, the Caribs, however, were not from Cuba as commonly thought, but they came from northwest Amazon region and pushed northwards into Hispaniola and Jamaica around 800 AD. And then inhabited the Bahamas long before Columbus arrived. Scientists cannot agree on Caribbean cannibalism, though, they say. Regarding Columbus's tale of cannibalism, Dr. Keegan said, it was possible, as Arawaks and Caribs were enemies, but they often lived side by side with occasional intermarriage before blood feuds erupted, and he suggested that maybe there was some cannibalism involved, because if you needed to terrify your enemies, eating them is a real good way to do it. And I would concur with that. But at the same time, if they talked about them taking their ladies and everything, you may be misconstruing that for intermarriages and how much copacetic life there was going between the two. When you say that they were living peacefully together, would you look at some of the ancient places where some people were definitely downtrodden by the other one and be able to look back and then turn around and go, oh, they were cohabitating? Is that the term you should use at this point? Or was one dominating the other one and enslaving him and cannibalizing and things like that, like what was reported by themselves, and then Columbus? This claim contrasts starkly with the findings presented in an April 2018 Yale paper which concluded ideas that the Caribbean's earliest inhabitants were peaceful farmers who were wiped out by the ferocious man-eating Caribbean people, were speculative and erroneous. Accounts passed down from early colonists, and so, you know, they passed it off as it had been in the past, but this man had been working on it and just about to culminate his paper, and they come out with a paper and they're like, blah, blah, blah again. And he goes, really, I'm finding the opposite. Dr. Reg Murphy, who led a team of researchers from Syracuse University, Farmingdale State College, and Brooklyn College, told The Guardian that their analysis of Carib diets found no evidence that they ever ate humans. So they aren't finding carved up skeletons or things like that, or weird artifacts that you would find along with it. But, you know, so what? Now it almost seems like with that last statement here that she just left wide open again. It doesn't. But they've never had this information before to go off of, and that makes it much harder to refute. But yeah, peaceful farmers, and then they just run in on them and what they look like. And here was a representation of the people that were getting attacked, cannibalized. Something strange there. They've almost drawn this person here to look like a Southeast Islander, perhaps a Negroid. That's strange. Huh. And there's people over here too, look more Aztec-ish, and they have hats on. Everybody else ain't got a hats on. What exactly is this supposed to depict? Oh well, moving on, guys. That's one of my January ones to read.